sides to it.
I'm curious about your thoughts. The states that have this legal, you mentioned they have to be 18, which I guess technically is an adult, but I'm curious your own opinions on that. You're 17 or 18 years old. I'm twice your age. Do you think that 18 is a good age? I mean, you have to be 21 to what? Purchase alcohol, right? So I'm curious as to what your thoughts are on that. Is 18...
Well, with 18, you can vote at 18, and I'm guessing that's the logic behind it. If you can vote, you should be able to have a say in that.
What's your opinion, though? I know logically what you're an adult, correct, right? But
Yeah.
what do you think about that, Zach? You're 18.
Yeah.
Have you had enough life experiences to make that kind of? I mean, that's a life-ending decision. I mean,
don't
do you think
believe
you
so.
have?
Because there's always that chance that you make it out of the 6 months and you're 18. If you make it out, you've got that whole life ahead of you. And yeah, I don't think you should be able to end all those possibilities with one decision.
At the same time, you can be called to war at 18. You can be called to risk your life for our country at 18 years old. So, I mean, with 6 months to live, why would you not be able to make that decision? Obviously, you're still close to your family at 18, or at least I am. Not all situations are, but I think that an 18-year-old has enough capability to know how heavy of a decision it is, not to take it lightly.
Do you see these laws having any impact on our societal attitudes toward the disabled or those who are elderly and feeble?
I think that would be more of like a disadvantage to them, that like, oh, you're disabled, you're sick, you're gonna die. There's not much benefit of you living, that you're not gonna have a good, a good quality of life afterwards. So that just wouldn't really be in their favor that much. So a little bit brighter hope for, like I said, the younger ones.
But as far as changing our views on society, I think the fact that this is in question, as Ms. Adler always says, the laws of society reflect its morals and beliefs. The fact that this is in question kind of does show our view of people who are have terminal illnesses. I don't think it would change our views on elderly. The fact that we can have a discussion and say, well, are they a financial burden? I think that says something about our society already. I don't think this would impact that, considering it isn't necessarily applicable to all elderly.
I don't think it affects our view of disabled people and elderly as much as it changes our view of death. Because in the past, death has been viewed very differently with the changing times. Used to be like in the world wars, you'd go out and you'd die for your country, and that was like the most honorable thing you could do. Death was honorable, even if you just died at home. And then it kind of changed. You don't want to die throughout the years. You would try everything you could not to die. And now we're back to it's okay to die. That it's kind of a respectable thing to die. And I think that just kind of reflects our culture, in that it's all right to die, that it's respectable, and that it's becoming like the new thing, like it was back in the early World Wars. So I think it just kind of changes over time.
These people are not willing to suffer anymore. And personally, I think there's beauty in suffering, because the Lord died for us on the cross and he suffered. And so I think that it's just an alternative way to end your life, to not suffer through it, even though it's kind of like you don't have courage.
I think past a certain point of suffering, it's not you that are suffering anymore. It's you're not capable of, if you're not capable of talking, moving, having a cognitive response to anything, it's not an issue of whether you're sitting there suffering or not. It's past that point in certain circumstances, by the point they would take this pill to end their life. They're not just like walking down the street one day and go home and take a pill and die. It's generally taken when it's to a point that they can no longer function.
Is there any momentum to make this a national campaign to legalize it in more states?
After Brittany Maynard, she was a very strong advocate for it. She shared her personal journey to make people more aware of it and make it more of a topic people can talk about. 2014, I believe there were 4 bills and jurisdictions across the nation, and by the start of 2015, after she had passed away, there were 25 bills introduced in the jurisdictions and 1 in DC. So it's definitely something that's becoming more prevalent across our nation. Death of Dignity is definitely trying to make it an option in every state.
I definitely believe that if that's like your platform, one of your main things that you're running on, you're not going to make it very far. Because while America is starting to change its mind towards that, Jack Kevorkian, they call him the Doctor of Death, or Dr. Death, he ran in Michigan before he died for a Senate seat. I believe it was Senate. No, Congress. And he only got 2.6% of the vote. And he was running, his main platform was that he wanted to get PAS legalized, something he got thrown in jail for, and kind of give death with dignity. That was his main thing, and he didn't make it very far.
Is there a difference between PAS and refusing treatment?
What do you mean?
Like if I'm really sick and they're trying to give me medicine, but I refuse that, is there a difference between me refusing treatment for my terminal illness and me requesting PAS?
I don't believe so.
I mean, you're not going to have the negative connotation associated with it. No one's going to question your right to refuse treatment. I mean, you don't have to have anything that a doctor tells you. It's just another way people starve themselves and stop eating. It's another way to choose to end your life.
What's the appropriate Christian perspective on this issue? Considering we don't get to pick when we're born, and we're not supposed to get to pick when we die. Or at least that would be one argument. What do you think about that, Emily?
I think that as Christians are against it, I think fully. I think even looking at the name, assisted suicide is wrong. And in Deuteronomy 30:19, God told Israel to choose life. And I think the Lord teaches us also in the Word that no matter how hard things do get here on earth, and also looking at the good and the bad, we should be happy in the good and mourn in the bad, but also just consider what God has done for us and know that in the end there is victory. And so, yeah, that's all I have to say.
Anyone else?
There was a story involving King Saul, and it's very clear he was injured in I believe it was King Saul, was injured in a war and asked, that would make more sense, was injured in a war and asked someone to end his life. He was very hurt. And it was very clear that King David ordered the Amalekite to be killed. He was the one who killed. Ordered him to be killed, and if it was okay, then he would have rewarded him instead of sentencing him to death. So I mean, I have 5 pages of verses if you want me to start reading, but it's very clear that the Bible's against it. I mean, time to be born and a time to die. Our body is not our own. Our temple of God.
This is one of my favorite points, so I'm going to kind of preach to you all for a minute. So, we're looking at Acts 16, 27 through 34 for any of you all who have your Bibles. So, it says, the jailer woke up, and when he saw the prison doors open, he drew his sword and was about to kill himself because he thought the prisoners had escaped. But Paul shouted, "Don't harm yourself. We're all here." The jailer called for lights, rushed in, and fell trembling before Paul and Silas. He then brought them out and asked, "Sirs, what must I do to be saved?" So what's happening here is Paul and Silas are in prison. And there was an earthquake, and basically their chains fell off. And so the jailer thought, these guys are leaving, it's Roman custom, if you lose your prisoners, you've got to kill yourself. Because if you don't, the Romans are going to. So he drew his sword and was about to. But then the prisoner said, no, we're here. We're here. Don't kill yourself. I believe that really shows how how God views these things. He wouldn't have put Paul and Silas in that situation. I mean, they could have run. He put them back in that situation, and the result of it, the Roman guard did not kill himself. So I feel like he put them there for a reason. He does not want death, and killing yourself is death. And because he did not kill himself, because all that changed, he went back and told his whole family about it. It says, "Sirs, what must I do to be saved?" But then after that, the couple verses after, he talks about how him and his whole household had changed. Now, to me, I just find that as like probably the clearest point speaking to this subject, that God put people in this man's life so that he didn't kill himself, and in result of that, both him and all of his family were saved. So, just in my perspective, I think God is against suicide because that ends all the work he can do right there in your life. There's so much more he can do if you just stay alive. And that's what I feel is the best point against it. And that's where I get my point from.
So your opinion is you are against PAS
I am against it, yes.
in any circumstance.
Mhm.
How about you, Justin? How do you feel about it?
To start, I was more or less neutral. Like, I wouldn't do it just like because, but I could see it for like, you know, you're definitely gonna die and it's gonna be really suffering and a lot. But throughout this, I've kind of been more negative to take that same view. So to be more against it.
Emily, how do you feel? I know you mentioned a little earlier.
I'm against it fully.
All right, can I ask you all a question? All this is true. So my aunt has been diagnosed with ALS. She, in the past 18 months, has gone from being fairly vibrant. She was fortunate, it started in her feet. It's worked her way up. She's lost motor control of her hands. She's probably within the next 3 months will be completely immobile. Do I have a right to tell her not to? Absolutely, I believe the Bible. Every single word. I would die for it in a heartbeat. But how can I look somebody that I love in the eye and tell her that she does not have that right to end that suffering? To where her mind is the last thing. Her body will fail. Her lungs will fail. She'll stop being able to eat. She'll have to go on breathing machines, everything else. But that entire time, her mind is still active. Do I have a right to tell her that she cannot do this? That she cannot end her life?
You can't force her to do anything. But I believe,
As a Christian, do I have the responsibility to preach to her, to tell her that this is not right?
I think you have to tell her how the Bible presents it, and then it's up to her. It's her choice after that. But I believe that you need to give the options. I had an uncle who had a terminal illness for, well, what was supposed to be 6 months, and it turned out to be 8 years. And had he gone through with PAS, he would have ended it after 6 months. And what happened in those next 7.5 months was he found his wife, who they loved each other so much for 7.5 years. His daughter was really going down a rough road. He was able to help her back. He was involved in drugs, alcohol, smoking, all that junk that you put in your body. He was doing all that kind of stuff. He completely changed his life around, and by the end of it, he said he could see Jesus, and that's the best thing that I feel like that you can hear. And so, had he ended it after those 6 months, I don't think he was a Christian. He wouldn't have been going to heaven. Now, I don't know your aunt; she may already be a Christian, but I just know amazing things can happen, even if she only has a little bit left.
Right. But can I support her when if she goes to make that decision as a Christian? Could I be present while she's doing that? Would that be supporting that action? How far are you willing to take your objection to physician-assisted suicide? Would you turn your back on a loved one if they did it? Would you be there to support them? Where is that line?
don't think I could go.
You don't think you could go, Abby?
I have no problem with it. I think it's not my place to sit there and tell somebody that they can't do what they feel is right, even if I had a moral opposition to it. Depending on how close the person was, I would be there. I would want to be there for their last moments.
Justin?
I think that's tough too, but like, I'm a little bit in between both of them. But like, you support the person, and like, in a selfish way, you want them to stay there as long as possible. But then also, you have to take their choice into consideration. That yeah, that's still their technical right to choose that if they choose. But to support them and try to persuade them to stay out of that selfish need a little bit, but then also to support them in the time that's left. So.
Emily?
Yeah, those questions are hard, and I think all I know that as long as you're doing the will of God. But for me personally, I think if I did not agree, but it is a loved one, I think I would like to be there for their last moments that I could have with them.
Thank you.
Zach mentioned Dr. Kevorkian earlier. So let's look at it from the flip side. We've talked about whether the patient has the right or what we would do in that situation. What about the doctor? If Dr. Kevorkian was arrested for doing it, how have times changed? Do doctors have to do it if the patient asks them? What's the protocol there?
He kind of went over the line. His wasn't just, here's the meds, take it. He actually had a contraption. He'd put your head in this kind of mask type thing, and then gas would come in. And there's times whenever he had to hold the patient down. And that's beyond just giving the medicine and saying, go on. That's like, you're interfering. You're getting involved in that. I think you're helping out with the killing more than just, here's some drugs. So I think he crossed more of a line there than doctors do today.
That line that he's talking about, the legal and not by choice death, is the same reason that doctors aren't generally involved with executions in a prison. It's not their place to end someone's life who doesn't want it to be ended. We've made that decision in our justice system that we're okay with capital punishment, but that's not a doctor's place necessarily. The legal side of things is no, they don't have to. Scared of that face. They do not have to participate, even in states where it's legal, but they have that option.
Did you say the doctor is not helping when he just prescribes the suicide pills?
He is, but I mean, he's doing it. I mean, I'm against it. I don't think the doctor should be doing this, but at the same time, I think there's a difference between here's some meds, don't do this around me, go somewhere else, and like holding down a body while it's shaking because.
So what is the difference?
I mean, I just don't like the other one. Getting that involved just, I mean, yeah, I think it's more than just handing off drugs if you're holding down a body. But I'm personally against both, and I don't think a doctor should be doing either. But at the same time, I do think, I don't know.
So giving someone the drugs makes them less guilty.
It definitely looks that way.
Free will. Person sitting there shaking isn't asking to die.
The person walked into the doctor's office and said, "I want to commit suicide. Can you help me?" I mean, it's not like against his will, Dr. Kevorkian is putting a needle in his arm. He's just helping finish the process, or whatever you want to call it. Is there a qualitative difference, or does it just feel that way?
I mean, it definitely feels that way. I'm not sure if there's more to it or not, but it definitely looks like it.
What about a doctor who removes a feeding tube, or as opposed to injecting them with a needle? Is that the same?
I personally don't like that, but I get most people are fine with that. Yeah, I just don't like